Joined now by our panel today, NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Symone Sanders-Townsend, of course, a former chief spokesperson for Vice President Harris, current host of Symone on MSNBC, and Rich Lowry, editor of National Review and an NBC News political analyst. There's Gabby Giffords and Mark Kelly right now doing some get out the vote and canvassing. The thing that's in the back of all of our heads tonight, Mark, is whether any of this election denialism or close elections will somehow motivate bad actors to do things. And I guess that is the thing. It's like, what could disrupt this week? It could be that.
Yeah, Chuck, you know, we've covered so many election nights, election afternoons, and you often end up hearing, hey, there are not enough paper ballots, or there's some irregularities at this particular precinct. But those things usually end up working out. There's not any kind of malice. It's just normal kind of snafus that you end up having, and things get rectified. And sometimes the court needs to step in and say, hey, you know, people weren't able to vote because of this, and we're going to give an extra hour or two to be able to be done. I also look back at what ended up happening in 2020, despite all the protests that we ended up hearing from former President Donald Trump. That was actually a really well-held election during a pandemic. It was like
remarkable in hindsight.
Remarkable. Yeah. And so when we're talking about, you know, gosh, we hope that there's not any bad actors and things like, I want to kind of go back and looks like even in 2020, it was a remarkable situation and on just how well election administrators, whether Republican or Democrat, actually ended up doing their jobs.
Apologies, that's probably the 17,000 phone calls you and I have gotten that say, hey, do you have any exit polls? If you're watching, the answer is no, not yet. That's not how it works.
That's the first thing I asked you.
Yeah, I know, exactly. No, it's suddenly, it's the one day that Mark and I are popular with everybody. Symone, what I found interesting there, you know, Kari Lake was doing get out the vote. She was, you know, I do think fear of the election on the Democratic side, it motivates voters, and I think Kari Lake believes it motivates her voters.
Well, you know, and local county officials in Maricopa County have responded. The county recorder in Maricopa County is actually a Republican, and he put out a statement in response to what Kari Lake was saying, because they want people to know that every vote is going to be counted. They want to be transparent about what is happening, because it is going to be close. In the last elections, federal, Arizona went blue, but the state, local elections were quite red. And so the question is, what's the situation? This go around, every single vote will count.
Rich, if Republicans have a successful night, but it takes 3 weeks for us to know this, do you think this will take some of the air out of that side of this argument, or is Trump going to continue stirring this pot and create these problems?
The ultimate source of it is Trump. Right. And he's not going away. I mean, they announce as soon as next week. But I do think delays themselves are corrosive, and Republicans are part of the problem in some key states. But Pennsylvania, we're not going to know tonight. We're probably not going to know tomorrow morning. And we all should do it, you know, the way Florida and other states do. Just count it instantly. Pre-count all the early vote and the absentee, and give people a result.
I can't believe we're going to say this. Florida's the model of how to do elections.
Yeah, exactly.
All right? Like, you know, you have to almost have a debacle sometimes to get it right. And nobody wants, look, all 50 states having the same format might freak people out too. But there's nothing wrong with following this model.
There is nothing wrong with following the model, but I think in Pennsylvania's example, it is the state legislature who said, no, you cannot count the ballots early. And so I do think that there's, you know, everybody's not on the up and up here. It was a political reason. A lot of state legislators I know in Pennsylvania who are Democrats say that it's political as to why the Republican-controlled state legislature would not move to count ballots early. They wanted the delay, a little bit of the confusion. And that's just not good for democracy.
All right, as we prepare for tonight, we decided, Mark, to take a look at the class of 2018, of the House members there, because it's a remarkable how short-lived this class is. In, you know, so many of them, a lot of them lost. Here what it was a pretty impressive class. It had a lot of moderate candidates won in some tough districts. And let me show you how many of them are left here at this point. And you can see quite a few are not coming back. And we're going to find out tonight how many of them are going to be here. These were the frontliners that won in 18. Some of them lost in 20. Some of them decided not to run again or got remapped out in here. But it's a reminder that these gains can be short-lived.
Yeah, and Chuck, so tonight we're going to be watching to see if someone like Abigail Spanberger is able to hold on.
Class of 18.
Yeah,
one of the stars.
Elaine Luria, another, Alyssa Slotkin. And, you know, our colleague Mike Mimley ended up following then former Vice President Joe Biden as he campaigned across the country for a lot of these folks. And it will be interesting, whether or not these kind of people, who a lot of them were out of the kind of the mold of Joe Biden, much younger, but people who ideologically kind of came from that kind of more establishment wing of the Democratic Party, can they actually end up holding on? And if you end up having the Spanbergers, the Slotkins, the Lowrys all go down, that class of 2018 will be completely diminished.
This has been an interesting theme among Republican operatives following the House really carefully. They've actually said, the door's more open in Oregon and California and New York for getting really Biden districts. I mean, some Biden plus 20 districts are under threat in theory, at least, whereas some of these districts that aren't as pro-Biden or maybe Trumpy, it's kind of harder to dislodge an incumbent who is probably there because he or she is a good politician.
Sharice Davids is probably example A, exhibit A to me.
If you're a Republican, you want that seat, though, because you can keep it for decades. You win a plus 20 Biden seat, it's going to wash out next time.
It's a one-term. Yeah. It's a one-term wonder.
Look, I think also Tim O'Halloran, right? Tom Halloran in another race to watch. If he can hold on, maybe it's looking good in some places across the country.
Symone, what's interesting here, and the same thing happens to the Republican side. The people that lose in the wave are the moderates. And then there becomes this fight. Well, the base says, well, you should have been more progressive. And these guys say, hey, it's the progressive issues that why I lost. What do you think the conversation is going to be tonight?
I think the conversation is going to be the same, and people should have to remember, this is district by district, okay? Nebraska 2 is very different from Indiana's 1st congressional district. Some of the issues overlap, but you have to run specific to the district. In Nebraska 2, Tony Vargas, for example, might be able to dislodge Don Bacon, where you have the incumbent Democratic candidate in 1st congressional district might get dislodged by a black veteran, U.S. Air Force veteran who is a Republican. Who knows?
What's interesting about the scenarios that we've come up with is the fact that 2018 was not a full wave, it was just a House wave. Because
like a trickle.
Right, because the party didn't win the statewide races. That could be what this could be a wave in the House for Republicans, but not on the state level. Rich.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the big states, obviously, high-profile states. Georgia, where Brian Kemp very likely is going to win tonight, probably handily. And to defy Trump on the election denial stuff, to destroy Trump's candidate in the primary, and then win this general election, and maybe bring the Senate candidate over the top is quite the political feat.
Look, can I just say, though, on that point, I am quite skeptical. There are 24 million new voters across the country since 2016. 2.5 million people have come out to vote in Georgia alone, early voting. I have to believe that benefits Stacey Abrams in some way.
My curiosity, I agree with you and Brian Kemp. If Brian Kemp ends up with how is he not the model for and how is this not a bigger blow to Trump than maybe we're all, this is a reminder that this party wants to move away from Trump.
Yeah, Chuck, actually look at the state of Georgia. Donald Trump ended up losing several races where he had endorsed candidates, and it wasn't just in that gubernatorial race at all. And probably, I think one of the things was the hangover from those runoffs in 2021, where Donald Trump inserted himself after losing the presidential election. The party ended up going down, and then all of a sudden, his power was not as strong. And you're exactly right. You look at Brian Kemp right now, approval ratings showing him above 50% in that state of Georgia, and probably one of the reasons why is he's doing better with independents who say, well, he's not a Trumpy kind of governor. And I think Rich is exactly right on that.
Symone, if you're the Biden White House and you're dealing with a Republican Congress, you want to try to take control of that situation. What's the first bill you say, hey, let's do something together?
I actually don't think that's where they're going to be. You've heard the White House talk about that if they are presented with a split Congress, immigration is a place where they're going to go.
That's what
trying to put Republicans on their heels so that Democrats can be playing offense a little bit. You want to talk about the border? Let's talk about the border. Here is our bill.
So
what are you going to do?
Go immigration first. I thought maybe they'd go crime first.
No, I think it's very much more likely that they'll go immigration first. It is something that the White House has been previewing, and there's already legislation on the table.
You guys are coming back, so I'll let you think about this, Rich. But I want you to answer the question. What's the first?
I'm getting 20 minutes to think
about
this.
What's the first bill that they actually want to try to get Biden to sign?
Good. I'm glad you're not asking me that spontaneously.
Yeah, no.
Sources on that.
I'll let you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.